Welcome to this episode of Implementing Best Practice in Business. We're here to help you and your organization understand and implement global best practice to help you face the business challenges of today. Join me, Richard Pharro, CEO of APMG International, in talking to leaders and practitioners who have applied these frameworks and practices to boost their productivity. They're here, willing to share their knowledge and experience to help you learn from them so you can do the same to make you more competitive in today's market. So today, I'm delighted to welcome my guest Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez, who is probably one of the very few gurus I actually know. So Antonio, how did you become a guru? What is your background? How did you become this exalted person in the world of project management?
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, Richard. It's strange. I had the pleasure to meet when I went for an MBA in London Business School, and I met some of these people who were really inspirational to me. I was never a really amazing student. I struggled to learn. And when I went to the MBA, then suddenly these people were able to teach me. They were making it fun. They were making it interactive and with case studies, practical. And I said, I want to be one like them. I know project management tends to be rather dry, very difficult to train. And I remember my first week of training in project management. It was so boring, Richard. It was so boring. And I said, can we do the same with projects? Can we make it exciting? And that's what I said, well, let's try. Let's try to simplify it. Let's try to connect with the people, make it interactive. And then from there, I just follow my passion and open a new door. And I really enjoy that. And I saw it working. And here we are.
It's interesting you say that. I've often thought that project management is boring, but projects are exciting. So
Oof.
maybe we need to change the focus on projects, which is what I think you've done, haven't you? Because, you now talk about the project economy, but, we've had projects since the time of the Industrial Revolution. So what do you think has happened in the last, can I say as much as 10 years or in the last 5 years to move the world towards really thinking about an economy built through projects?
I think that's a great observation, Richard. A difficult question as well. What I've seen, the big two trends, two big trends. One macro is you're right that there's been projects all the time, and especially after each crisis that we went through, starting from the Second World War and reconstruction of Europe, Marshall Plan, then different crises, and then the financial crisis. You could see a grow an explosion of projects just to rebuild economies, and this is happening now with the COVID. The amount of investment and public funding for reconstruction of the world is never seen before. So from a macro perspective, everybody is looking into projects to reactivate, recover, rebuild societies, and the hit has been severe. And the second big trend, which we didn't see before, is within organizations. The type of work has significant shift from operational based, which was the focus of the last 80 years since Taylor and Henry Ford, where we started all to build working hierarchies, and we start to be specialized technically in one field. And project management was just a temporary thing that nobody really paid too much attention. A few individuals were doing projects, to a world which is now, this is the main thing. Operations are being automated, robotized, artificial intelligence. So I would say the huge shift is that the way of work in organization is being carried out through projects, agile teams. I like to talk, like you say, around projects. I don't mind about this methodology or the other. I think these are tools that we need to learn. So project-based work is what's happening. And the big difference, Richard, also is that in the past 20, 30, 40 years, you only need to focus on project managers. This would be maybe 5% of the whole organization. I remember being part of that. You were a bit seen differently. Why this guy is not doing Six Sigma? Or and we're doing project management. What's that? And now everybody needs to learn projects and project management and agile. So it's affecting everywhere. So that's what I call the project economy.
I mean, that's fascinating. So, I think the first formal reports on project success were about 50 years ago. The Standish report, I think, was the first one that I can recall. Now, the project profession in the last 50 years haven't really moved the dial. You know, the improvement, the percentage of projects that are successful, by whatever measure you have, hasn't really changed by more than a few percent. So do you think it's because we were too focused on project management rather than the people engaged in the projects to make them much more exciting, to make them much more interesting, that people, the best brains, actually wanted to be involved in the project rather than involved in a staff function? Do you have any thoughts on why the next 50 years is going to be more successful than the last 50 years, of which we were both part, I hasten to add. So we do have to accept some accountability for that. But what do you think is really going to happen in the next 50 years?
Well, again, great question. I want to hear your views too, Richard. You are also an expert. You've been in this field for many years, a thought leader. My view, see, absolutely. If we don't change anything, if we keep doing what we do, it's just going to the failure rate is just going to increase. We've seen that digital projects are even more complex. The figures from my partner Robin Speculat in digital maturity and surveys, they were going up digital transformation. It looks a bit like when Prince 2 was born. Remember, I think as far as I know, it was to tackle IT projects because they were all going out of control. And now, yet we have another digital projects and they're going out of control. So maybe we're back into that situation where we need to find other ways. So definitely we need to change. I have my views. I've done research. I think definitely what you say, we need to focus less in the methodology, more on the people, more on the inspiration, creating high performing team, giving purpose to projects, focusing. I think this is a second area, focusing more on outcomes rather than inputs and templates and artifacts. But let's focus on the value that we bring and how can we accelerate that. I think that will shift massively. And then a third part, which is what I want to try to address with the book, with HBR, is senior leaders. Senior leaders are not prepared for this world. They're not ready to be great executive sponsors. Very few of them are. And senior leaders not only have to sponsor these initiatives, which dedicates that requires time, requires special skills that maybe they have to develop. I think so, according to research. And the second thing that the executives need to do is they choose the projects where we invest. They prioritize them. They allocate resources. So if they don't know how to do that, if they keep choosing 10 projects out of 10 ideas and they are not able to focus, this is going to be a mess still. So that's kind of my high level reflection, Richard. There's urgency to change, urgency from the project management profession to simplify, to focus on value, and to coach senior leaders. I stopped hoping that project sponsors will get trained. That was, I think, the biggest misunderstanding in the profession for the last 30 years, 40 years, that senior leaders, executive sponsors will go for a training, they will learn, and they will do their job right. That will never happen. Hopefully, my book changed that. We need to go and pick them up and tell them, sponsor, I'll train you, I'll coach you. But that's my view, Richard. I'm curious to hear your views.
Well, I'm not sure that I know as much about that as you do, but I
Mhm.
certainly agree. You know, there's always two people involved in a project. You know, there's the project manager and there's the project sponsor or the project leader. And I always feel that they disappear, that having initiated a project, they're nowhere to be seen. You know, they're too busy doing other, in inverted commas, important activities. And so much of it then falls to the project manager. So somewhere I think we've got to try and tie reward, recognition, remuneration into the role of the project leader, into the role of the project sponsor at the senior level. But there's also some work going on in Denmark with the Half Double Institute, where they talk about leadership and they talk about everybody involved in the project is responsible for project leadership. So I think there's also a need to cascade it through the project team. But Antonio, you've had the great privilege, I think, of talking to some pretty senior project leaders. I mean, I had the pleasure of actually having a preview of your book, so I know that you've spoken to some titans of industry who have led some major programs or major projects. You know, what do they do that's different? You know, what is it that the guy who was responsible at Boeing for a major investment in an aeroplane, what does he do differently from the, can I use the word, average project leader? You know, could you share some of those insights without giving too much away? Because clearly I think people need to read the book to get the full story.
Well, yeah, no, I had the pleasure to connect with people like Alan Mulally, for example, who was the program leader sponsor of the Boeing 777, which was a breakthrough in airline, and Alan was so successful that he ended up to being the CEO of Boeing, and then he moved to Ford to be CEO. So I think that shows that when you bring these type of skills of project leadership into action, it can open lots of career opportunities. But to your question, I think what I learned from Alan, and I had the interviews with him, met him personally, is that he just did the job right. It's nothing exceptional from what we've been doing. He was 100% committed, even more. He focused on the people. He really was present. He was helping the team to push uh, when there was need to push. One thing that I really like about Alan was he had these weekly meetings with the senior leadership team, but everybody was invited to join and see how is it going with the program. I've not seen that very often. We tend to be very exclusive and secrets, and here he was very open. This is everybody can join from around the world, join us to our call. Second big thing is, I think we all know that, but it doesn't happen all the time, is if you have a problem, bring it. He was telling me every issue is a gem. It's something that we need to excel. We need to work as a team. We need to find a solution to it. So bring it to the table. Bring it the first thing. So that kind of very positive, constructive, psychological safety, he was actually putting it in place. He also, something that I really never heard before, he brought his stakeholders to the project. He had worked with all United Airlines and all these companies. They were part of the project. He brought the stakeholders into the steering committee. They were working in work groups. So it's not just me, project team, and the client, but really integrated with suppliers, with customers. So I thought that was pretty interesting because then you build a buy-in, you build something that your customer will want. So fully integrated, not just ad hoc calls or talks, but part of the team. So and then, like you said, Richard, he didn't disappear, which is one of the issues that stakeholders or project sponsors love the kickoff meetings. They like to be there and show how important this project is for and they never show up again. And he was there every day, and very very much focused on the people, like you said.
Antonio, don't you think that Ali McNally, though, was in a very privileged position? You know, he was working on a project that was a make or break for his organization. Yeah, he had a global brand that suppliers and stakeholders wanted to engage with. So, yeah, how does his approach, you know, cascade down to an organization where, you know, the sponsor and the project manager are working on important but not so make or break projects? You know, do you think it is transferable?
I think that's a great question, Richard. It's not the same when you have that sense of urgency when you're working on the most strategic project in your organization than working in other less maybe kind of relevant projects, and that's a challenge. And that's what I think. It's very important that in projects you work on the purpose of your project. I think if you manage to connect your project purpose with a bigger goal, for example, you might be replacing an HR system in your organization, but if you and that's what 99% of the project manager will say. I'm working on the replacement of the HR system. But if you look towards finding the real purpose of that project, which is of course not the top priority, but then you say, why do you want to replace the HR system? You say, well, this new system has more functionalities, it allows for employees to build communities. And then we have issues today with our employees. They're not engaged. They're not happy. They're leaving. So then you're connecting the system to an issue of the organization, which is employees not happy. And then you escalate that even more, and you say, why do you want to have employees happy? And is to have a better company, happy employees, more talent. So we're moving from a nature system to the benefit, the purpose, which is creating a more attractive company where people feel happy. And once you start talking about that, your project suddenly changes. It's a different story. You can engage much more people. You will have more impact. You will have more support from senior leaders. I think that's a bit of a game changer, I would say, from what we've learned so far for the last 40 years, which is the business case, always focusing on the financials, return on investment, savings, and these things today, they're not attractive at all. So I would recommend to move towards purpose-based projects, and that will help to get that attention that we, like you say, we often lack when your project is not the top one.
I'd like to challenge you a little bit on the business case, because the UK government have a business case that looks at 5 different dimensions, of which return on investment is only one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been applied successfully for a number of quite wicked problems, like dealing with unemployment, dealing with drug abuse and things like that. So I think there are some tools out there. But I do agree with you. It's about understanding the purpose. And you said earlier on in our conversation, Antonio, that you were not a good student. And my view now is that you have come to investigation and research with a vengeance, because I think you published your book called The Project Canvas a little while ago. And I think I read somewhere that you had more components in the Project Canvas in your first draft than Alex Osterwalder had for his business canvas. Is that true? And what does the current business canvas look like as a concept for the project leader, the senior management team within the business, to try to understand, at a single glance on a single sheet, what the purpose is of their project?
Yeah, no, on your first point, Richard, I agree. I think there are good positive trends. I put in the last part of the book where I look at the future of projects and project management. I talk about the case in the UK about this strategy of building recovering the UK infrastructures, and they go beyond the traditional business case. They look at sustainability aspects. They look at crisis. They look at technology. So I do think that there are already very good practice. They are not yet embraced, and that's, I think, what we need to help with the book. With all what you do, Richard, as well with APMG, is to shift the focus from business case, which I think is still important, but is not the driver, to benefits, impact, and so on. On the second question, yes. Well, I had the pleasure to meet Alex and Yves Pignon, Alex Osterwalder, many years ago. I think it was in a Peter Drucker forum or Thinkers 50. And I love them because they were able to simplify, they call it the business Canvas, no, the business model Canvas, which is 9 blocks, and it's so popular. They have I think 5 million users on downloads. And I always thought in project management we didn't have anything like that. My reference has been mostly from PMI, so the PM block, and it was so heavy, and I never found like a simple one pager that we could use to address the fundamentals in a discussion. So I was inspired by that canvas, and I started to draw my own canvas, the project canvas, and it came up with 14 dimensions, building blocks instead of 9. And Alex told me, "Come on, yes, you have 14." And I say, "Alex, the PM book is 700 pages. I just summarize them in one. Come on, give me a break." But I realized that I was still very attached to some key concepts that we've learned and we've always talk about, like risk management or deliverables, or um, and I was having difficulties to not show them in my canvas because I thought they're integral part. So I said I need to change that if I want to talk with my new book to people who are not project management experts, senior leaders, and whoever. I need to move away. So I would say my first project canvas is for the practitioners, people who will recognize procurement there. We will recognize most of the knowledge areas that we talk about. The second one, which comes out with HBR, is more for those other stakeholders. So I simplified to 9 building blocks, and I'm very happy and curious to see what happened with that. But I felt really I had to put my way out from my roots of project manager to take out risk management out of the canvas, because I think it's an integral part now of the whole project per se.
Interesting. So, do you think you'll get as many as 5 million downloads?
I hope with the support, of course, with my network, with HBR. I don't know if we'll get those millions, but I do hope, because I think there are more projects than business model changes, right? Every company has one business model, but companies have hundreds of projects. So I think the scope, the target is even much bigger. So in that respect, we maybe even more. I just hope that, and Richard, something that I want to make clear to the audience, I don't have the answer to everything. I'm not proposing that my framework is the solution. I'm happy people to contribute. I think we're in a age where it's about co-creation. So anything that we can improve, we improve together. And I'm just trying to shift the focus and bring new tools that are more adapted to the current world.
If you could turn back time, what would be the 3 things that you've learned over your career in project management that you would have really liked to have known when you started?
Oof, what a tough question, Richard. I didn't expect all these tough questions. I thought it was more like a chat. You're making me think. But I like it. Definitely the approach towards senior leaders. I've been too naive thinking that they will play the role, that they know the role. I've learned that I don't do that anymore, but for 20 years I was just left alone, many cases with the sponsor not really understanding, not having full backup. Now I address that directly. If they want, I talk to the sponsor. I say, "Listen, you want this project to be successful. I need you. I need to see you. You need to be that." I kind of tell them what I expect from them. So that has worked. The second, I think one thing I've done many, many years was building methodologies, project management methodologies for organizations. And it was always one type of methodology for all your projects, and either Prince2 or PMBOK based, customized. And I realized that that's wrong, because projects are different. Some projects will require more agile, some of them can be done on more continuous improvement basis, some other. So I've been a problem because I've forced companies to use just one method for all their different type of projects. I do that now differently, and I say you need to build kind of a tool set. So these are maybe the two. Third one, I think, is self-confident. I think what you see, at least the way I've seen project managers, I'm more like a manager. I need to have a plan. I need to follow the milestones. I need to get upset if the things don't go according to plan. I need to monitor very closely the triple constraint. And I see myself now more as a leader, somebody who needs to drive, almost like a mini CEO who I can, drive change, create value, confront people if they're not collaborating on my respect. So I feel much more accountable for not just the deliverables, but for the project, for the benefits, for its strategic sense. So kind of moving a bit, taking a bit the space of the sponsor, if you want. I think that has make a big difference. People look at you like, wow, this person cares. He's not just delivering milestones, but he wants to change your company. So I think that attitude, that mindset, definitely very useful. Does this make sense, Richard? Well, what would you do different?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I learned very early in my career that I couldn't work with poor sponsors. And I think I was removed from at least one project because I had a disagreement with the sponsor who wouldn't make decisions.
Oh,
So I would
nice.
certainly agree with you that standing up to the sponsor is always a good idea, because at the end of the day, if you don't and the project goes in the wrong direction, as a project manager, you will be held accountable regardless what you did. So you might just as well be considered an inappropriate project manager because you've got a conscience and you're trying to do the right thing, rather than just carry the can because the sponsor was ineffective.
Yeah.
I like your idea of a tool set,
Hmm.
and I do agree. I think there is a there are different clans in the world of project managers, I think, and they would argue fiercely over their approach is better than anyone else's, but I do think things need to be tailored for the organization so it fits with the organizational culture as well as the appropriate tools for it. And I do like your idea that project management is pretty good training for a general management role, for a board role. So it'd be nice to see projects at the board level, but that does mean that project managers need to start talking business language rather than project language.
This end-to-end mindset is what we call the strategy implementation professional, is having that more accountability, not just on the project life cycle, but what happens before and what happens after the project is delivered. And that's, I think, a very important view, which is much more overarching of what we call, I would say, implementation professional than just the project manager.
Yes, I agree. I think the too much focus is spent on looking at what the strategy may be, or indeed what the program may be, and then once the policymakers have actually decided what they want to do, then it's all assumed it can happen very quickly. So I like the concept of the implementation professional that gets in to help shape what the project, the program, the initiative is, and then has a responsibility from there all the way through to delivery. And as I think, as we said earlier in this conversation, it would be pretty good if you could tie people's success and credibility to their ability to take the idea and execute it effectively through the life cycle of that idea and then into operation within the business. So interesting conversation. Antonio, it's always great talking to you because the conversation always veers into some very, very interesting places. So many thanks for spending the time to have this conversation. I wish you every success with the publication of the new book.
The HBR Harvard Business Review Project Management Handbook, Richard. And thank you for having
Excellent.
me. Thank you. Thank you to your team, Estelle. Thank you. It's a pleasure always to talk to you. We can make a better world. I'm sure about that.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you for listening. We're always keen to hear your feedback and suggestions for future episodes. You can find all the information in the show notes below. Please visit apmg-international.com to find out more about our accredited training and the certifications that support them that are related to the topics discussed in this series. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I look forward to you joining future episodes while we continue our exploration into best practice and the benefits it brings to global business. Thank you.